Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Drought Status and Seasonal Outlook webinar. My name is Emily Elias, and I am the director of the USDA Southwest Climate Hub. We are one of 4 groups that got together to present this Drought Status and Seasonal Outlook today. And I will just briefly go through some logistics. You should all be muted as you come into the room. But if you have questions, we certainly want to answer those questions. So if you are joining us via Zoom, you can put those questions in the text box. If you are calling in and not able to join us via Zoom, then you can email those questions to leahpw@quiviracoalition.org, or you can text them to Leah at 517-974-9383. We are recording this webinar so that we can share that later in the future. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact Helena Deswood at USDA.gov. It's helena.deswood@USDA.gov. And you could call her at 505-205-9119. So again, there are 4 groups that came together to present this drought status and seasonal outlook, and we're very happy to partner with them. If you need contact information for any of us, then that will be presented on the last slide of this webinar. We're working with the Santa Ana Pueblo Department of Natural Resources, which is one of 19 Middle Rio Grande pueblos in New Mexico. The tribal government created the Department of Natural Resources in 1996 to develop and implement natural resource management programs that protect, preserve, and enhance natural resources for current and future tribal members. We're also working with the Quivira Coalition, which is a nonprofit based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that partners with agricultural producers and land stewards to build resilience on arid working lands. Quivira's programming includes hosting workshops and an annual conference on regenerative agriculture. They also organize intensive agricultural apprenticeship opportunities for new farmers and beginning farmers. They also lead and participate in collaborative research and restoration projects and explore land stewardship practices that sequester carbon in soils and plants. And Quivira has been working to build partnerships and offer educational opportunities tailored to tribal agricultural and land management goals. I am the director of the USDA Southwest Climate Hub, and Helena Deswood and I represent the Climate Hub. The hub is one of a network of 10 hubs across the nation, working to support resilient agroecosystems and forested landscapes in the face of climate change. The Southwest Climate Hub covers 5 states, and we operate in 3 functional areas: research and science synthesis, outreach and convening, and decision support. Our hub is located at the Jornada Experimental Range in southern New Mexico in Las Cruces. And we recently co-launched a drought learning network, which is a peer-to-peer network of lessons learned, and you can reach out to Helena if you would like to join that. And our 4th partner today is the New Mexico Climate Center, which is based on the main campus of New Mexico State University, where they work to provide climate-related information to the local community. And Dr. Dave DuBois is the director of the New Mexico Climate Center and also the state climatologist for New Mexico and an associate college professor at NMSU. He provides climate and climate change information and education to a variety of stakeholders, including policymakers, the agricultural community, industry, and educators. And he also gives a lot of talks and holds workshops every year on topics covering climate, drought, air quality, and climate change. He teaches and trains students at NMSU and maintains an active research program in air quality and climate. And he chairs the New Mexico Drought Monitoring Group. He is a native of New Mexico, but grew up on a farm in southern New Jersey. So we're really lucky to have him here today to present this outlook for us. And we may do these on a monthly basis, a shorter time frame, so we'd love to hear from you. We're not able to go around and have introductions because there are 100 people in the meeting today. So if you would like to introduce yourselves in the chat box briefly, let us know you're here. We can save that at the end and we'll know you're here and can be sure to include you on future events. So with that, I'll turn it over to Victoria at the Santa Ana Pueblo. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Marawa. My name is Victoria Atencio, and I am the Environmental Educator and Community Outreach Coordinator for the Pueblo of Santa Ana. And I would like to welcome you all today to today's webinar. Thank you all for joining. I would like to give just a quick background. In April, we had planned to offer a workshop on rangeland precipitation monitoring at Santa Ana Pueblo for tribal producers and natural resource managers. However, due to the latest circumstances, we wanted to ensure safety and well-being to everyone who is involved, and we will be postponing that workshop to a later date. We decided to postpone this workshop and commit to hosting webinars, like Emily mentioned, on similar topics in the months leading up to our rescheduled event. We are offering this webinar and will be continuing offering webinars to provide educational opportunities to our tribal producers and natural resource managers, as well as other interested individuals. We still intend to host the rangeland precipitation monitoring workshop, and we will have that information at the end of this webinar. With that, today's webinar will be focused on drought status and seasonal outlook presented by Dr. Dave DuBois, State Climatologist of New Mexico. He will be discussing the weather over the last year with attention to snowpack, surface water, and drought, as well as looking at the latest seasonal outlooks for precipitation and temperature for the next few months. With that, Dave, thank you for joining us today.
So let's look at the rainfall over the past couple of weeks. I know there's, I uploaded an older version that was this weekend, and I just updated this one. This is as of this morning. Last 2 weeks has been pretty dry. This is, what we're in, that's pretty much what we expect, is we're in the dry part of the year for most of for Arizona and most of western New Mexico, although this is the time of year when we get more precip events on the east side of the state in West Texas, and you can see that over here. Let me turn on my little highlighter guy here, and then a little bit of precip and up in the mountains in Colorado. Let's go to the next slide. So, so this is the slide that says precipitation. So there's two maps on this slide, and so over here on the left side basically shows the precipitation since July of last year. So I just want to kind of highlight kind of where we've been over the last year. As you remember, we had a pretty dismal monsoon last year. It was pretty much very spotty, and in some areas of the Four Corners in New Mexico, we had almost no rain. As you can see over here on the up here in the San Juan County, much below normal, and it basically over very similar issue over here in Arizona and southwest Colorado. So this is the precipitation over the last 9 months, and then even bleeding over to the eastern side of the state and south central New Mexico, a few areas. However, southern New Mexico has fared a little better. If you go over to the right side of this map here, this is the water year. Remember, the water year starts in October. So this goes from October 2019 to the end of March. These maps are updated once a month, and we're just about ready to update these maps from the Western Regional Climate Center, but pretty much shows very similar. We'll talk about this rain event here that caused these, but pretty much the northern tier of New Mexico and even southern Colorado have been pretty dry. And not only dry, but it's been very warm. It's actually the last year from July through September, it was the 13th driest statewide for New Mexico, and also the warmest on record for the statewide. And for the Four Corners, which is Division 1, the climate division, which is the most of the northwest corner, it was the 6th driest. That was July through September, and the 2nd warmest. So not only has it been dry, it's been pretty warm in the Four Corners. And when we go to the next slide, it says Cochiti Dam, water year 2020 precipitation. So I'm just going to pick a few time series, accumulated precipitation for a few weather stations across New Mexico. So this is showing you starting from the water year from October all the way till pretty much a day or so ago. The brown line here, the smooth line, that's the long-term average. That was what we would expect. That's like it's a 30-year average. And then the green line is the actual accumulated precipitation, the actuals. So as you can see, if the green line is below the brown line, we're below average, and if the green line is above the brown line, we're above average. And so it just shows you we started off kind of a little bit slow, but we've been above average over this location, and as of a day or so ago, we were about 137% of average. And so that's equivalent to about 7.5 inches. And last year we had a little more, an inch more. We had 8.51. So let's move over to the next location, Los Lunas, just south of Albuquerque. And so you can see the same kind of plot. We also started up a little bit dry in the beginning of water, but we've had a couple of really good rain events to bring us well above average all the way through right now. So right now we're about 133% of average, which translates to 5.62 inches compared to remarkably almost the exact same 5.63 inches last year. So we're pretty much following, at least in terms of the total precip, right along from last year. So let's move on to the next slide. Let's go all the way up to northern New Mexico, bordering Colorado, up in Dulce. Same time scale, water year 2020. Not so good. If you look at here's the average, what we usually expect, but look at the green line. We've had a really dry beginning of the water year, really nothing, almost no precipitation until mid-November, and then we started to pick up a bit, but then it started to dry out again. So you can see well below the long-term average, and right now we're right about here. The black dots mean basically that there was no reporting, but I did fill in the data in right now. As of yesterday, it was 16% of average for the water year. So that's 6.68 inches accumulated since October. And last year they had just a tad over 13 inches. So you can see some places are doing really well, and places up north are doing very poorly. And let's go a little further west from Dulce, just follow along the same longitude there. Further west in longitude. Let's go to Farmington, looking at water year 2020. So same time scale again, below average pretty much the whole time through the water year. So right now they've accumulated 3.23 inches, and remarkably, we had 5.21 inches last year. So we're actually doing worse than last year for this water year. So that's equivalent to 71% of average. So not doing well at all up in the Four Corners, northern New Mexico. And so if we even look a little further, I'll show you some drought maps in a little bit, but just kind of give you context of some numbers. If you look at the last little over 2 years, from basically October, the water year back then, to right now, they're running a little over 7 inches deficit. So they're behind in precipitation by over 7 inches. And so here's the graph. So here's the long-term average, what we would expect. They should be getting about 21, almost 22 inches, and we're at 14.65 right now. So that's kind of gives you a sense of where we are. It's a long-term drought, several years, and it actually goes even further if we go back from other times. But let's look at this a little further and looking at the whole picture. Well, not only it's dry, it's been pretty warm over the water year. So this is over that whole period from October all the way through the end of March, and it's colored based off of the percentiles. So if you see anything as warm colors, yellow, mustard, or this brownish, that's above normal, top 33% in terms of the temperatures. So it's been very warm, near normal in some areas, but above average, and a few areas are much above normal. So getting hit on both sides. So let's move on to the kind of the snowpack. I'm going to go through a few basins, just kind of give you a sense of where we've been. So this is pretty common graph that we use to show the snow water equivalent, SWE. So basically that's not just the depth, that's the actual liquid amount of precip that's fallen in the mountains. These are mainly on the mountain, the basins. And so as you can interpret these, the green line here, this line right here, that's our median. So if you take a bunch of years, and that's from 1981 to 2010, you take the median of all those snow water equivalents, and that's in inches of snowfall, liquid amount. And then the black line is what we just experienced this past winter. And then the top lines is the highest, and then the red line is our driest. You can get a sense of where we are right now. We started off not bad. We actually did really well, and through December through February, we had a lot of storms. That storm tracks has gone over our mountains, and but however, we started to warm in the lower elevations, and we had basically right after February into March, we pretty much had the storm tracks that basically didn't go over our area, and so now we're into this meltout. So however, we're still retaining a lot of our high elevation snowpacks over 10,000 feet, but a lot of our lower elevations have already melted out, or very quickly. You can see this melt out. And it's pretty much following in general, we've kind of seen this pattern. Basically, it's sort of a condensed winter, shortened winter, and we've seen an early melt out over a lot of our mountains. And you can actually see this this is kind of our peak here, and we've kind of started to slow down before we hit the peak. So even several weeks early, and we've even seen it start melt out a whole month earlier. So let's go. That's the Rio Grande Basin. So right now we're about 47% of the median, where we are right here as of a day or so ago. And let's go over to the San Juan Basin. So same story. We started really well. The forecast was saying, yeah, it's not bad. But then you can see it. We've kind of gone over back into the below the median, below average. And so sort of that. I mean, we had a little spike in, but then that wasn't really enough to kind of make it all the way to the actual median. So we're about 75% of the median right now, and then we're showing this quick melt out. Let's move over to the Pecos Basin. Doing really well again, a little even further into the water year, doing really well, but we're seeing that melt out, and we're about 71% of the median right now for that basin. Let's move on to the over in the far west of New Mexico, and then going into a little bit into the northeast Arizona, the Chuska. We've got a couple sites there, so not a lot of sites in a shorter time series, but we've seen some above the median snowpack for that area. Keep that area pretty much not too bad. So let's go lower in elevation. So from the higher mountains, let's go down toward the stream flows. So how is that reflected in what we're seeing down in the rivers? So let's kind of go through. There's 4 of the hydrographs here for the rivers. So it's up. If you go to the stream flow for the past 28 days, slide, and upper left is the Anomalies River. So the little brown triangles, those are the daily mean flows. So the units of here are cubic feet per second. And the blue line is actually what we measured at the stream gauge. As you can see, starting, and this is the last month, here's what we should be at an average, and here's where we are. So we're below average for the Anomalies. And if you go, excuse me, down to the San Juan, same issue here, below average. So this is where we should be for this time of year, and this is what we actually measure. And this little point here is the measured discharge, so manually measured. So if you go to the upper right on this slide, the Rio Grande River at Embudo, if you know where that is, here's our long-term average, and here's where we are. So we started off not too bad.
On Friday, there is a seminar about the Gold King mine spill. If you're interested in that, I will paste this into the chat box. Also, GrassCast is a tool to produce annual forage production. Some of the folks from the team are on the call today, and there is a workshop about this tool. It's rolling out into Arizona and New Mexico this year. We're really excited about that. And there will be a workshop about how those annual forage productions are produced. That will be on May 14th, and from 9 to 11:30 Pacific time. We did that because it's mostly for Arizona stakeholders. Dave will also be sharing with us some work that we've done nationally on the regional linkages between production, agriculture, air quality, and climate. That will be on May 18th. And then, as I mentioned, we are co-launching with the National Drought Mitigation Center and NIDIS and others, the Drought Learning Network. And we have 5 teams that are part of this Drought Learning Network. And one of those is the New Mexico Tribes Working Group. So if you'd like to join that group, please contact Helena. And if you're interested in, this might be the worst time to ask you this question because we just are having technical difficulties, but we are thinking about doing shorter 10 to 15 minutes updates on a monthly basis. So if you'd like to join those, please do let us know. And if there's a topic that you're particularly interested in, wildfire, water scarcity, soil health, and I'll turn it over to Victoria or Ariel if you would like to talk about the range precipitation monitoring workshop. This is, we hope, will be an in-person workshop in August. Ariel, can you share that with everyone?
Hi everyone, this is Ariel. I live out in Cochiti, and so I'm the Education and Outreach Director for the Quivira Coalition. I currently live out in Cochiti, and so unfortunately I don't have the ability to participate in the Zoom meeting to the same extent as normal, and so thank you so much for joining us today. As was previously mentioned, we have every intention to still host the Rangeline Precipitation Monitoring Workshop. We had hoped to see everyone there earlier this month, but unfortunately with the new situation that has arisen, we've had to adapt, and a lot of our partners have thankfully been flexible in that process. And so we plan to reschedule the event for August 2020. That may also be pushed back further into September. It all depends on different how things are lifted over time. And so we hope you're able to join us. You can find the information for the postponed event on the Quivira Coalition website underneath our workshops page. The link is also available on the presentation, and we will plan to share that with you all in the chat box. We will not open registration until later in the summer, but if you'd like to receive a notification when registration opens, you are more than welcome to complete the form that is found on that webpage. And so we hope you consider joining us.
Another thing that we could do is we could show the current Drought Monitor page, Brian, and you could talk a bit as one of the Drought Monitor authors about the current conditions and what you're seeing while we wait for Dave to join us again.
Yeah, let me share the link to the webinar that I just mentioned. So I put that in the chat room for everyone, and we can share that broadly if people are interested in GRACE or GrassCast to tune in on that day. Okay, so I was actually the author the last couple weeks, and we are still looking at this area in the southwestern U.S., especially in parts of northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. The information we were looking at, I heard from Dave DuBois last week and a couple others from New Mexico as well as from Colorado, that area, there's a pretty good dry signal that carried over through the winter. And even with some of the improvements that we've shown in portions of northwestern New Mexico and northeastern Arizona, the long-term, you see we have it identified as long-term drought there around the Four Corners with that L. But the short and long-term dryness that we're seeing from Utah into Colorado into New Mexico is still pretty stark, and we are starting to see I think Dave was hitting on some of those hydrological impacts pretty good, that even as good as some of these areas had recovered over the previous water year and maybe even into this water year, there is some long-term issues that are still showing up in the data. And the problem is, even when we start looking at the Drought Monitor, the number of long-term indicators, and I'm talking about things that go out past 12 months to 2 years to even 3 years, we're pretty limited on what we can look at. But some of the best identifiers of drought in those regions are still the reservoir levels, and also looking at those individual water years. I kind of look at it as a bank account, that snow that we get in the winter is really that moisture we're going to be withdrawing later on. And when we have multiple years that keep coming in under what they should be, that deficit just continues to grow, and when we start seeing that there's just less available water for folks. I don't know how many have been following the dryness in the West, especially along the coastal areas of Northern California and Oregon. But they had a significantly dry water year this year, as well as temperatures being well above normal as well. And the last couple of weeks, I showed quite a bit of degradation in Northern California into Southern Oregon, with that new D3 area showing up last week. And I think we need to be paying attention in all of the Four Corners regions and all 4 states of Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, that without some significant changes, for one, we've seen the heat kick in this week already in the Southwest. And so from Southern California through Southern Arizona, triple-digit heat already kicking in. And that's even abnormal for that area for this time of year. Typically, we don't see those low 100-degree temperatures for a couple of weeks even showing up. And so to see that in April already, that's catching my attention. And I think what we're really going to have to do is watch that Four Corners region to see not only when the heat kicks in, but if we do not receive any decent precipitation in the form of rain, or even some late season snows at those upper elevations, I honestly think that we're going to start seeing some more issues develop in that Four Corners as we go forward, especially when you start looking at the outlooks. And the monthly drought outlook is showing persistence of that drought continuing. And then the seasonal, if we go out even further, really this is already going out through the end of July. We're not seeing much indication that there's going to be improvement in this region. And realistically, if you start looking over the West, we're starting to see those drought areas kind of merge between what we're seeing on the West Coast and what we've had in the Four Corners, really not boding well as far as looking at impacts going through the summer. So again, an area that definitely we're going to be paying attention to. And we should see a new, this one came out at the end of March, we'll see a new monthly drought outlook coming out at the end of April here. And we can kind of see, I expect to maybe even see more expansion on some of these regions, just due to some of that heat that we've seen already.
Hey, Brian, thank you so much. I feel so fortunate that we have these amazing people in our community, the New Mexico State Climatologist, and Brian, one of the Drought Monitor authors. I think Dave has made it back on, so when you're ready to transition, that would be great. And I just feel, I think Nancy Celeber might also be on the line, the Arizona climatologist. So we're a fortunate community, and thank you, Brian, for filling in and sharing with us your last 2 weeks of what you've learned.
I owe you something, Brian. Just showing you the water year precip. This is liquid. This is total, not just a squeeze snow water equivalent, but all the precipitation. So most of our big places where we get our water, surface water from, 68, 70s, 80%. So below average. We started out really well, but then started to get dry. So here's some maps of the surface water, the reservoir capacities and percent of that. So we're about 25% of Elephant Butte, 32% of Caballo over in the Pecos, 64% Sumner, and 76% of Brantley, Avalon, 46. Going through the Rio Chama, 28% down up in Heron, 29% El Vado, 47 Abiquiu. I mean, go to the other San Juan Basin over in Colorado. Smaller reservoirs, 46%, and Jackson Gulch. Bigger reservoir through the San Juan, Navajo, 76%. So kind of, hopefully I'm still on. This looks at the soil moisture using the land information system, 0 to 40 centimeter depth. This is percentiles. So it's showing is pretty dry up north, and just kind of echoing what the precip is showing as well. And let me go to the vegetation. It was one of the products we looked at for Four Corners and even the Northeast vegetation. So that's neat. Kind of what Brian was saying. We need to be carefully looking at what goes on. And this also goes further into Colorado and over in Arizona, very similar trends of the vegetation. And just seeing what some of our condition reports popping up. We're seeing some folks showing moderately dry and even severely dry in a few areas. So we got to get that reports from the field to see what's going on. So we're seeing some response across the Four Corners in New Mexico. So that's one of the areas we're looking at. So looking at the Drought Monitor, I think Brian started to look at this already, so I won't go too much detail. So this is where we are this week. We're about 44% D0 through D2, about the same it was last year, actually. Just redistribution in a few areas. Pretty much the northern part of the state is the area where we've been suffering. A lot of the area, we've seen a lot of precipitation in the south, and we had a really good douse of water from the remnants of Tropical Storm Narda that came in, gave spotty and even few couple-day reports of 5 inches. But it's sort of, as you get above Roosevelt County and here, it's sort of hit or miss from last summer, and that's what seeing that our drought linger on from last year. So this is the statewide drought monitor since since 2017, when we're seeing a lot of the impacts have started back then. So it's been more than 2 years suffering in certain areas, and a lot of areas haven't really recovered from this drought from the summer of 2018. Here's our summer of last year, 19, and we're seeing some areas persist and even start to develop from this drought. So this the areas where we're really looking at, and there's not a lot of recovery, some improvements, but hopefully we're going to get some precip to help out with that. So looking at the outlooks, we look at the tropical Pacific for some answers. Right now, we had some answers in the past few year or so, but right now we're in this neutral category. The Central Pacific has been warm on average, but it really hasn't responded in terms of going into an El Nino. We have to, in order to have an El Nino, you really need to have several ingredients, not only the warm sea surface temperatures, but the atmosphere has to respond. Changing of the wind patterns, the convection. We've seen some of that, but it hasn't really manifested. So we're looking at this 3.4, and it's about 0.6 degree anomaly, but however, it hasn't not officially an El Nino. So the forecast is showing, here's the spaghetti diagram for that same region, El Nino 3.4. We're right here right now, and we're seeing maybe some modest cooling, but pretty much staying neutral. That's sort of the direction we're heading in terms of the sea surface. So which doesn't really help us out a lot. Because that's one of our drivers to tell us the seasonal forecasting is if it's an El Nino, we kind of know what kind of direction we're heading. If we see a La Nina, we know that those are usually dry for our areas. But we're heading toward this neutral territory, which is not real helpful for looking at seasonal forecasts. So it's kind of reflected in the probabilities from the IRI, put these together. 3 categories. The blue is La Nina, which we don't want for our area. Gray is a neutral, which we're in, and then red is the El Nino. So blue is La Nina, gray is neutral, red is El Nino. So right now we're basically looking through the rest of the summer, more than 50% chance of the neutral to continue. But the probabilities come up from the La Ninas. So we'll wait and see in terms of, this is usually the time when we usually see the development of either an El Nino or La Nina. So not a lot of predictability in terms of what we're going to see later in the winter, more likely a neutral. So what about the next few days? Well, other parts of the country pretty wet. So this is the quantitative precipitation forecast through the weekend to Monday morning. Pretty much dry for most of all of the Southwest. There are little spots here in the mountains, but if you're gonna friends in the Northeast, pretty wet. What's our outlook for May? Pretty much most of Southwest above average. Probabilities pretty good for above average temperatures. Not much there in terms of precipitation forecasts. Equal chances. So unless you're in Colorado, there's a slight chance of become a little more than average, but not that strong. So what if we look out next few months through May through July? And this is sort of one of those times a year it's hard to do forecasting and outlooks that go into the monsoon. But however, the outlook for temperatures is above average. However, equal chances for most all of the Southwest, even into West Texas, most of Texas, equal chances. So, and that's kind of a lot of result of that, at least in this area, is because of the El Nino Southern Oscillations not really providing a lot. There's other things to look at. I won't have time to tell them, but I mean that's kind of driving the eastern part of the country, and then it's below average here. We've had in the past, we've had a negative Pacific North American pattern that helped out, bringing in storms, but we'll see what's going to happen. So there's not a lot of predictability for the monsoon. I know I get a lot of questions about that. It's really too uncertain to say for sure anything happening. The main issue is there's no strong climate driver or model run. This is one of the model runs. The NMME is one of the models that we look at. There's a lot of models we look at, so it's not just one. I just wanted to pull one out just to kind of show you the patterns of for June, July, August. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of answers I can give in terms of the monsoon for at least the Southwest. So, but however, we do see drought persisting, so not a lot of precipitation. Basically, we're seeing that that drought what we have is going to probably likely stay with us and even get worse in the Chuska Mountains. So this was a drought development. So be prepared in terms of the scenario of it's going to stay with us in terms of how to plan for the next few months. So not a lot of good news. Hopefully our monsoon is going to be a surprise, and hopefully we don't really know yet. Maybe when we do some updates, we'll give you some more answers to look at some. Maybe when we get a month prior to the monsoon, maybe by late May, a little more answers, but we'll see.
Thanks so much, Dave. That was great. And thank you, Brian Fuchs from the National Drought Mitigation Center, for stepping in. It's great to have such a rich wealth of knowledge on this call. It looks like we'll probably be sharing these on a monthly time step so that you can keep appraised of the drought conditions as we move forward, as we know more about the development of. Excellent. So we're getting some yeses. The monthly webinar would be great. If there's a specific topic you'd like to hear, also share that with us. We'd be happy to talk about wildfire, talk more about drought, talk more about water scarcity, ways to cope with water scarcity. So please do share that with us.
I'm gonna give another a drought outlook tomorrow, actually, and I'm gonna be talking about grass cast. And it's definitely worth looking into that and still not. My bottom line with that was some areas of concern for the areas that are in D1 through 2, even the D0 areas already suffering. And I think the GrassCast was showing there's some issues that we really need to be paying attention to.
Thank you. Yes, and GrassCast, for those of you who don't know, is a annual forecast of rangeland production or productivity. It's rolling out into New Mexico and Arizona this year, and the first maps were just created. And so those will be shared via webinar, especially for rangeland managers. And that webinar will be on May 14th from 9 to 11:30, and it will allow for some really in-depth question and answer periods, breaking into some breakout groups via Zoom. And it looks like Kendra has a question for Dave.
Yeah, so let me read the question before it scrolls. So it sounds like you were saying that we don't know if 2020 will be an El Nino. Are the circumstances around that neutral stance considered unusual? Is it related to climate change? So we get, these are oscillations of the kind of the globally, at least is on the Pacific side, and they have global repercussions. So we look at El Nino as one of the, there's 3 different phases of that oscillation. There's the El Nino, La Nina, and then this neutral. We're in this neutral phase of that right now. And they tend to go, we've had a few cases where we've had back-to-back El Ninos and back-to-back La Ninas. Neutral is it's not unusual to get those. We've had cases where we've seen it stay in neutral for quite a while. It's all about it's not only the temperatures but the atmosphere, as well as these things called upwelling, and there's circulations under the ocean that really modulate some of these, bringing in cold water from the below surface. So it's there is my opinion is that there is a fingerprint of climate change on all these. It's not the driver, but these are a lot faster. They occur on a frequency of maybe 2 or 3 years, even a little longer in terms of the frequency of occurrence. And it's mainly that looking at the distribution of temperatures, as well as the storms, the convection across, going all the way to Papua New Guinea to Ecuador, just looking at our drivers and indicators to see where things have go back and forth. So we've gone through big phases. Back in 2011, we've seen, like 2010 was an El Nino, and then we flopped into from El Nino to a La Nina. And at least for most of New Mexico, especially south of I-40, and La Ninas have been pretty destructive in terms of being really dry, and El Ninos have been in general wetter, but still there's different flavors of all these in terms of each El Nino and La Nina is different, and sometimes we get really dry even on a moderate El Nino. So it's we sort of have to take these one at a time. Hope that helps.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dave. I would like to turn it over now back to Ariel, if you're able to share any last words with us. And I'm going to share my screen with the contact information for everyone who presented today. So if you have any other questions, please contact them. This webinar was recorded and we will share it online. So that will be available through the Quivira Coalition and also the USDA Southwest Climate Hub.
Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you, Dave, for joining us today. We appreciate you being a champion and sticking through and trying to get your internet back on. And also, Brian, thank you so much for lending a very helpful hand during the presentation. And so thanks for everyone who helped contribute this morning. And thank you, everyone, for your patience. Virtual meetings are always, they always have technical difficulties, and it's just an unfortunate circumstance that we all face now. But thank you so much for sticking with us this morning. We hope that you're able to learn something new today, and hopefully got got some information to help you plan for this upcoming summer. And so please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. We're more than happy to help you out with anything and everything related to land management, agriculture, and climate. And so please feel free to reach out to any of us. Should you be interested in participating in future webinars, feel free to send those ideas to us. We will save all the comments from this call and keep those for our reference as we move forward to offering more of these webinars in the future. And if other ideas come up, you're always welcome to send those to us. But thank you so much. We hope that you stay safe and healthy, and we appreciate you all for joining us. Nisha, and you all have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. This concludes our webinar. Please stay tuned for more. We see there's a lot of interest. Thank you all. Stay safe.